All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of Shoot Your Shot.
Shoot your shot. Shoot your shot.
Hi, guys.
We are actually in person,
Isn't
which
this
is
crazy?
Georgia and I are physically together for the first time
look,
in
If you can
6
see
months.
us, we are literally touching each other's hands.
And we're so excited to be kicking off another episode in person for the first time in 6 months with a very good friend of ours, DJ Ramirez. I'm so excited that he's here.
Welcome, DJ.
Welcome, DJ.
Hi, guys.
How's it
Hi.
going?
So good. Yeah. Recovering.
Yes.
I
Yes,
feel
So
like- yeah.
we all just got back from Georgia and Jack's Friendsgiving, Elation's
Yes.
Friendsgiving, which just ended yesterday. And
Literally,
so
I got home at midnight last night, and it's now
Yeah.
like 10 a.m. and we're
It has
recording
been
this.
a chaotic few days for all of us. DJ
Yeah.
cooked up a storm for 70 people.
Yeah, I just need
80
to say, DJ is the first off just best human in general, but he is also one of the best like chefs, cook. Like if you want good guacamole, DJ is your man.
It's my grandma's recipe. I stole it. I
Oh.
can't take credit. Yeah.
This is true. Yeah, incredible chef, but also more importantly,
Yes.
or who knows, maybe eating food is more important.
Yeah, I don't know.
But more importantly, DJ is the founder and creative director of Monuments, an agency that specializes in long-form video content, photo production, paid media strategy, visual brand building, go-to-market strategy, and
Thanks.
cultural awareness and impact. He is also, used to be a creative director at another agency
Yeah.
called Art of Visuals, which many of you may know as it's a pretty well-known
Yeah.
agency slash Instagram page, or back in the day, it was a
Yeah.
huge Instagram page. So you used to be at AOV for how long?
For like 4 years.
4
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
So we're stoked to have you here because we want to dive into the topic of what it is to not only be in an agency, but also build one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm stoked for this.
I would
There's
say, 'cause I
so
also-
much to talk about here.
And Claire and DJ have been friends for years.
Yeah.
So I don't even know a lot of this part of your life.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to dive into this.
Yeah.
Yes, we actually met at a Sony project
Yeah.
3 years ago with Art of Visuals.
Yep. Yep.
So
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Yeah, we
cool,
met.
full circle.
Wait,
We met
where did
there.
we first meet?
At wait,
Where did we meet?
what friends? No, feeding the homeless.
Feeding the
Feeding the
homeless.
homeless
Yes.
before
That's
Friendsgiving
right.
That's
last
where you
year.
invited me to Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
And then
Oh.
I came and Claire was the only person I really knew besides you guys from like just a few interactions.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is
crazy.
crazy. That was
Yeah.
that was a little over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, if you guys listened to the last episode where we talked about Friendsgiving last year, this is the guy who brought me food in the hospital.
Yeah,
Just
he's
so
the one
you
that brought
guys
her the
all
baguette.
know.
Oh my gosh, it's full circle.
It's all full circle.
Claire was absolutely MIA. And how many people came last year?
I think like 50.
50. Okay.
And
Yeah.
this year I think was 70.
So I didn't know anyone. I knew you guys kind of, but I was like, well, I guess I got to make friends then.
I know. We like forced you into the wild.
Yeah. And I was we were in the middle of the desert. So I was like, I
Yeah.
can't leave.
we
couldn't
held
leave.
we held everyone
He was
hostage.
stuck. He's
We're
like,
like, you
even if
guys
I don't like anyone here, I have to interact.
I made friends. It worked out. It worked
No,
out.
funny.
it was great. Okay, so
Let's get into it. Yeah,
want
because
to-
I'm excited.
I want to dive into everything agency.
sure.
First, give us a little bit background of how you even worked with Art of Visuals. Were you always in the agency life? Were you
Yeah.
did you start off as creative director? Bring us through your journey to AOV.
But
Definitely.
also to
yeah.
discuss what Art of Visuals even is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So I definitely didn't start as creative director. I think I started like PA level. Well, I'll go back a little further. I used to work in a coffee shop. That was like my first real kind of job thing that I did. And I found a place that was like a web design agency / coffee shop. So I made coffee in the morning and then I like worked on websites and stuff
Wow.
in the
Wait,
that's
afternoon.
sick.
That's very
At the coffee
unique.
shop?
It was like a company that had a coffee shop inside of it.
Oh.
And so
Okay.
I like learned how to make coffee and then I would work in there. I would work there in the mornings and then like do website stuff in the afternoon.
Wait,
sick.
that's so.
This also makes sense because DJ's obsessed with coffee.
I love
Like at
coffee.
Friendsgiving,
Yeah.
he brought this little like go-to espresso maker thing and like a little packaging, and in the morning was making.
I was
Wait,
like,
did you
"What?"
really?
I was like grinding
Literally,
up
yeah.
the coffee.
That's
This
amazing.
is all
Yeah.
making sense
It's
now.
all checking out. I learned how to do web design, and then from there, I got hired at like a real proper like advertising agency for web design.
Okay.
I was in a basement and I was bored out of my mind doing web design with like coders, and I'm not a coder. And I was like, I need to get out of here. And I saw like the video team at this agency, like going on shoots, doing photo stuff, having fun. And I was like, how do I escape? I would just like watch them every day, like leaving, and they're all like high-fiving each other and going to lunch, and I'm just like in a basement, like writing code and like pulling my hair out.
Saying, save me.
Yeah, because like if you know me, like I'm very like ADD and I need to be like out doing stuff, and that was literally like dungeon life for a while.
How old
So
were you at this point?
I was like 23, 24.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did
so-
you go to college? Is this post college?
I never went to college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started at this web design coffee place like when I was like in my 20s, and I just did like random jobs before that. But I asked the director from this agency if I could like hold lights or do sound or like whatever. I was like, I need to get out of here, and he's kind of like a friend. And
You're like, I need to get out of
I
this
was like, I
basement.
need to get out
Help
of here.
me.
And so he talked to like the CEO and was like, hey, can we start pulling DJ on shoots? And then eventually I just started going on every shoot. And then eventually I started shooting, and I started doing like small like directing or like assistant directing or more like production management stuff for them. And so this was like a agency that did like TV commercials and kind of like full service creative. The biggest one in Idaho and kind of like Seattle, Idaho.
Okay.
So that's how I got into like video, photo production, and all that stuff. And I ended up like running a YouTube show within that agency, doing like all of their kind of like experiential stuff, like in person. We built like a retail like pop-up store out of like a shipping container, and I like
Ooh.
got to like
Wow.
weld
That's cool.
it and like travel all around the state with it. That's how I know like Preston and like some of the people, because we like went all over Idaho with this campaign.
Cool.
And I was
Oh.
like
I
doing
didn't know you
all
knew
of the
Preston.
I didn't know you
camera-
knew Preston either. Wow.
Yeah, so we met in North Idaho, but
Oh.
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, so all the like anyone who was in Idaho saw this campaign because it was literally blasted to like everyone in the state saw it. So, but yeah, so then from there, I left there. Kind of got like it was really corporate, and like corporate's hard for me because I'm like freeform jazz.
Yeah, I'll
We
say.
all feel that.
I think corporate's like
So
horrible for all
across
of
the
us.
street from that company, there was like a co-working space, and I started just like working out of there. And I like didn't really have any like projects, but I was like, I'm gonna show up at the office every day. So I would go in at 8:30, and I would like make my coffee and like set up my desk and just be like, all right, hopefully like a job's gonna come through. And I obviously was like doing my website, doing outreach and all that stuff. Idaho is pretty small, and so there's not a ton of like client work. But I saw this guy there who was like always on his one wheel, and we're like the only young people in this building. It's all very crusty, like corporate, boring, like the blandest people you could imagine. And then there's Prince with his sunglasses on, like on a one wheel,
Yes.
rolling through the building, taking calls and stuff, talking so loud. And I was like, who is this guy? So we ended up talking, and he was like, oh yeah, like I run a media company, and I started showing him some of my work, and he was like, we need to start working together like right now. And within like a few days of that
Wow.
conversation, he was like, put together like a deck of like maybe what you can help with and like some stuff we can do together, and like let's start working together right away. So I did like a couple of projects as like a kind of like a director or like a producer for them. And then like yeah, within the week he was like, okay, cool, like come on board, we'll do like a full-time thing. So I worked for them full-time from that point until a couple years ago. I actually just recently I'm putting some stuff together for like my site and like case studies and stuff, and I pulled up that initial deck that I did for him,
Oh yeah.
and we like accomplished like all of the goals
Oh
Wow.
that I had
Wow.
initially set
Amazing.
out. Yeah, so it was really cool because like some of the stuff we were trying to do, sorry, I know this is like a lot of detail, but
No,
No,
I
no,
love
this
this.
is
I love this
amazing.
because also
Okay.
I know Prince, and I had no
Yeah.
idea that this is how they met. So I'm loving the background.
And I
story
also
of
have no
everything.
idea about any of this.
Yeah.
So I'm over here like,
we were literally like two oddball creatives. Like literally, we would stick out like a sore thumb, and the fact that we were like in this, it was like Prince is a very magnetic person, and we both kind of, it was literally like two magnets like across the room slowly over like a week or two, like coming towards each other, and then we were like boom, and then once we started talking, it was like game over. Yeah, it was like we're gonna work together.
That's amazing.
But yeah, we had like revenue goals, and then one of the things that we were trying to do. So AOV is like a giant Instagram community. It's like 2 million followers. They had a podcast, like a YouTube series, like all of this stuff. One of the goals we were trying to do was to get away from, which I feel like a lot of influencers deal with this, but of like brands trying to give people product in exchange for shoots.
Yeah.
yeah.
So this was happening a lot in the beginning, and it was a lot of product, or it was like bigger brands like like Pendleton or like Peak Design or whatever, and they're like, hey, we'll give you all this stuff, go on this trip, shoot our stuff, and we'll give you a bunch of bags and stuff. Well, Prince had like so much like free stuff from all these brands, but I was like, we really need to like, if we structure this more like an agency, That's where I had just come from. We can be getting paid for these things, and then we can just buy a backpack. You know, we don't need the backpack in exchange. We're offering them so much value. The problem was the communicating that value. It needed to be like a really clear, simple way to do that. And so I helped kind of refine this like one page for Art of Visuals to reach out to all these brands. So we ended up landing Sony as like a long-term like relationship client. We ended up landing Intel as a client, MSI, which is like a computer company. We did all kinds of stuff. We did like billboards for Times Square, like video billboards for Times Square. We did massive, like, you know, like $500,000 headphone campaigns for Sony. We were able to break out of this box of like an influencer getting paid to promote a brand or to post something on their page to an actual like agency doing like advertising work for a client. And I know that's some of the stuff that we were going to kind of talk about, but we were able to break out of that mold because we could clearly communicate the value. And then on the flip side of that, the creative was like up to par with what a brand would expect. Like a Sony. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. How did you show these brands that you were now an agency? Like, how did you communicate that clearly? Because you keep saying communicate it clearly, but what concretely did you do? Was it the way you showed the agency off, like how you presented the pitch deck?
So we made a deck that was like, it was called like a capabilities deck, and it was basically like this. It was like a magazine, and it was like, here's what, because all these brands wanted to work with Art of Visuals at this time, and it was like, yes, they can get on a call and you can talk through all of that, but really what they needed to see was like, because there was a lot of parts and pieces, and just kind of like how my agency is, there's like a lot of moving parts, so much stuff behind the scenes that you don't see at all. Like Prince is like a brilliant strategist, but like if you looked at Art of Visuals page, you wouldn't see that was like a part of that. And so what we did was we made this book. So for example, we had a podcast with 30,000 monthly listeners, but brands didn't know like how they could interact or like get on that podcast. So we sold sections that were like a 30-second ad, a 1-minute ad, or like a live read where we just talk about their product on the podcast. So a brand could be like, okay, we want to interact with you. We're going to pay you X amount of dollars to do this podcast ad. And it could be a recurring thing or, you know, like kind of like a one-off situation, but basically taking all of these, like, it's kind of like marrying the worlds of traditional advertising, which was like my background up until that point, and then like this influencer world. And I had no experience in the influencer world before this, so like I never really experienced like the clout chasey or like the a lot of the things that happened like when we would travel with like AOV, or like some of the things we would do. Like people were like huge like super fans, and they would just like want to be around or like want to be friends because of being connected to like such a big thing.
Well, I remember, just to like butt in for a second, when I was like maybe 21, 22, you guys posted one of my pictures on the AOV Instagram, which at that point had I think 1 million followers, and I was like, oh my gosh, like fangirling, because I had only been doing this like full time for 2 years, and I was like, I just got reposted by this like super well known. You're like one of the OG Instagram photography pages in the world. It was like a Game of Tones, Moody Grand's, like same level. So there was this like, because it was such a foundation like in the creator world. Yeah, it was a huge cultural big deal to be on that page.
Also, it blew up. It blew up like a lot of creators. I didn't start it, by the way. Just making that clear. It was Prince who kind of started the whole thing.
I was gonna say, how many people were like on your team? Was it just you and Prince, or like how many people are we talking?
No, it was like 5. We had like 5 kind of full-time people working at any given point, and then but we would scale up. So like for like one of the projects you did, we hired like 30 people, and so I worked with like you know, a director and like a strategist, and like we basically brought on this like whole team to help us execute depending on the size of the project. And so that was a lot of my role, was like coordinating all of these people, making sure everyone had the right communication to know like what their job was, and then also to like for me, my job was to make sure they were doing their job. Like for you, I gave you like a photo brief that was separate from the video brief that was like, hey, here's the images we need to get. I read Sony's like 250-page brand guide and was like, okay, here's what we can shoot, here's what we can't shoot. And then I was like standing over her shoulder, just kind of like making sure that everything was falling in the brand guide and that we were, you know, like in line. That was like kind of that first Sony shoot. The second one was a little more like chaotic,
Little
and so
free-for-all.
yeah, it was a
So,
free for all. Yeah. Go ahead.
Question, to get back to how you were able to transform this Instagram page into like a real running agency, would you say, from what I understand, that instead of giving clients the like free for all for, hey, we'll just shoot your project,
Yeah.
your product however you want, by giving
Yeah.
them specific options, is that how you were able to transfer
Yeah,
yourself to
yeah,
an
sorry, I'll go
agency?
back to that, yeah.
Instead of just saying
Yeah, because
like,
I'm really
Yeah.
curious about this because we even struggle with this.
Yeah.
Like Jack and I with Elation, because how you were saying, we offer so much and it's so hard to dial it in. So I think that's
Yeah.
really important.
So much of branding is telling people how you want them to interact with you, and I feel like with influencers specifically, they're like, well, you tell us. It's kind of like this like game of like no one knowing what they want. So it's like, well, you
Yes,
tell
that's so
well, you tell
true.
us how you want to interact with us, and you're like kind of like batting your eyelashes because you're like this pretty, Instagram page with a lot. You're like the popular girl, and then the nerdy guy who is not cool, which is like the brand, is kind of like, well, I don't know what
it's a great
I need to
analogy.
do
It is.
to interact with you. And then you're like, well, how much do you want to pay me? And he's like, well, how much is it going to cost? And it's like this conversation that never goes anywhere. And so for us, what we did, and it was like a thick deck, but it was like podcast, Instagram page, YouTube video. If you wanted to make like a series, so the same kind of YouTube series I worked on at the last agency, we actually ended up doing that for Adorama, and it was like 100K plus for this YouTube series. And we traveled all around, we interviewed our friends, and like made a whole thing of it. We got like a Sprinter van and like traveled. It was kind of like the same concept, but just in like the photo world. But we were able to pitch that, land it, get a contract signed within like months of sending them this deck, because we're
Oh,
like, here's what we're
wow.
capable of. We can go on the road and make a show for you, and here's what it will cost per episode. So like my thing is and I feel like that was one of my like big contributions to AOV was helping structure these things more like traditional TV advertising, because in TV advertising it's not like, oh, well, we can make you a 45-second video, or we can give you these photos or whatever. It's like there's very specific things you can buy. You can buy programmatic ads, you can buy banner ads, you can buy a 30-second ad, a 60-second ad. But it's like, it's really structured, and influencer world is not that structured.
So
Yeah.
giving them very structured options is what was able to separate you guys
Yep.
apart from an Instagram page, because you were being very strategic with what you were offering and making it
Exactly.
very precise and saying this is exactly what you can get, and
Yeah.
you can pick from these options, instead of letting them have
Exactly.
more of like a creative,
Yeah.
maybe not creative control, but more control over what you were giving them.
It's just, it's telling them how they can, you're like, here's what we're really good at. Here's our audience size, and here's our metrics. Here's what you can expect when you work with us. And then also here's the level of our creative. So that was the other thing that I feel like we did better, is like we leveled up from just traditional like influencer brand deals. So we were able to get money through, I think I can talk about this. We were able to get money. I won't say like any of the brands, but we were able to get money that was allocated for influencer deals to make traditional creative. So like
Okay.
a brand that would
Interesting.
normally work with an agency to make a commercial would work with us as influencers, but we would just be making them a commercial. So we were working with their creative director. We were working with their like whole branding team to make traditional advertising that normally would be through an agency, which it's like a different budget, different money. And that's kind of something I wanted to hit on too. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Are
yeah,
you, are
'cause
you are you saying that because it was like something that you were posting on the AOV page? Is that what you're saying? It was like a influencer
Yeah.
kind of product? Is
So,
that
yeah,
what you mean
so
by
there's,
a
like, two-
commercial
there's,
for
like-
an influencer?
There's like two different budgets with like any major corporation. There's like engagement. So it's like paying people to interact with your brand, whether that's a like or a follow, or you're trying to build that. And then there's like straight up like awareness, which is like an Apple commercial. It's like, we just want people to know how cool our brand is, or we
Yeah.
want people to know we released a new product. No one needs to
It's
like
not living
it.
on a specific page.
It's not
or
living on a
anything. Okay.
specific page or anywhere. No one needs to like it. None of those metrics matter for awareness. And this
Right.
is where I feel like that influencer world is completely oblivious to this whole other
Oh, they have
thing
literally no
of
idea.
like a brand awareness. Brands will pay, and it's more than sometimes the engagement, but brands are paying to let people know that their brand exists and just to be out there. But the metrics of like social metrics don't really matter for awareness. And so that's where like me knowing that coming from like a normal agency, I was like, oh, well, you guys have this awareness play and it has to be really high quality and we have to read your brand guide and we have to understand your brand really well. But we can do that. We can do these things that are your normal advertising things too, on top of having 2 million followers. So we can post it and we can share it and be strategic.
That's
And
so unique. Would you say that it was difficult to pitch to these brands as both an influencer and also partially as an agency? Like, how did that that work out because were you presenting to these brands or were they reaching out to you?
So having an audience always helps because you're kind of, especially a big audience, you're kind of like the belle of the ball. You're like,
And everybody already kind of knows you.
yeah, everyone kind of knows you. They know of you. So it was kind of this thing where we just like sent people a message being like, hey, we expanded our services. Like we can do more for you now than just influencer stuff. Like we can do these more traditional, and then we kept like kind of an ongoing portfolio of that sort of stuff.
And then now I guess I have two questions.
Yeah.
So did you find more success but on the influencer side or the actual like agency brand side? Like where would you say?
I mean, financial success for sure on the brand side.
Okay, that was gonna be my
Yeah.
follow-up. Like how did the
Like, we
budgets
set-
look?
Yeah, they looked good.
Oh, okay, good. I was
Yeah.
like, they looked good.
Yeah, I mean, like
Without
like
so,
what
like,
do you
without,
want? I mean,
I
I can
was
give
gonna
you
say,
specifics. Yeah.
without going like naming like an exact brand, like I guess could you give us an example of like what a deal would look as the influencer side and what a deal would look as the brand side, both
I mean,
like,
I can
with
tell you,
deliverables?
I don't want to talk too much about like AOV financial stuff, but like
Yeah.
for my own company, like I have projects right now where I'm not posting them. I'm not really sharing too much about them, but they range from like 50 to 75K, like a quarter.
Oh, wow.
And that's me creating content for a brand outside of social, outside of any of that. It's just strategic content that I'm producing like with my team. It has nothing to do with like influencer world. So it's just promoting. On the AOV side, obviously that was scaled up. There were projects that we did where there were like $250,000 plus.
Wow.
Yeah, for like a single campaign.
That's so
Yeah.
crazy.
And that's obviously like gross. So that's not all like, once everyone's paid and all that stuff, that looks a lot different.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason that like margin wise, it's kind of hard to like, the margins are lower for production. And that's where like strategy and consulting. And I think Prince and I both kind of realized that. And we're both doing that. We still will work together on some projects, but we're both kind of doing that like strategy. So if a brand's like, we have a lot of money to spend, we're like, we can help you spend this money. We can help you be smart about how you put these things together. We know how to read metrics.
But I think that's really cool because I feel like a lot of people get really torn between like, do I need to be an influencer nowadays if I'm also a creator? Can I literally just be a creator? Do I have to have followers, this and that? So it's cool that you are discussing that you can have success in both worlds.
So yeah, between influencers and like a traditional agency, if somebody wants really good creative, typically they're not just going to an influencer because influencers are pumping out so much content that they're not always like really focused on the quality.
Yeah, it's quantity over
It's
quality.
quantity over
Yeah.
quality. It's posting. It's also
And usually the creative direction also is not really there. It's
There's
more about
not
getting
a-
something quickly
Exactly.
versus like an actual thought out process concept.
there's
behind
not
it.
a lot of like art direction. There's not a lot of
Right.
planning. There's not a lot of approvals as well. So you're kind of like working towards your audience. Where there is like real big money is making content that speaks to the brand's audience and maybe leveraging some of your personality or not. Like I think Short Stash is a really good example of that, where like he came from like a traditional agency too, but he's like, you can leverage my personality or my brand or my color tones or like whatever, but also I'm going to make you something that is at like the utmost quality. He was an art director too.
Right,
So he
right.
very much gets that like a brand has a brand guide. Like I feel like for a lot of influencers, like when they're asking these questions, they're not like, send me your brand guide, send me your metrics for the last month.
They're
Things-
thinking just the post.
they're
They're not thinking
thinking-
the overall
exactly.
brand and how they're going to sell the product for the brand with the brand's vision.
And that's
Yeah,
where
totally.
a lot of influencers are just getting one-off deals, where agencies are like these retainers, where like the longer you work with these creators, the more they understand your brand, the more they dive deep. And so for me, I could be like, oh, they don't like, well, like when we were working together, I'm like, they don't like when the headphones are shot this way, or like these are the tones that we need to play with. So like to the lighting guy, I'm like, keep us in this temperature range. There's just stuff like that. I'm like, there's no specs on the headphones. Like all of these kinds of things, even like the language that you use, you understand that. Where with an influencer, it's kind of like it's just going to their audience, so it's kind of like not as important to the brand.
So I want to get back to how
Yeah.
you were reaching out to these clients, these big brands when you were at AOV, and you were talking about a pitch deck. Were you, so first of all, you had a team underneath you because you were delegating tasks to other people.
Yeah.
Were you the one who was literally coming up with the pitch deck and the concepts and how everything was proposed?
Yep.
Or was this a team member? Were you overseeing everything? And then how were you sending this to these clients?
Yeah.
How were you even reaching out to them? Like, where did you find the people, the right people to reach out to at Sony, at Arama, or like all
Yeah.
this other stuff?
So it was that everything we did there, I feel like was a team effort. I feel like my part in it, the first capabilities deck I designed, and then I helped kind of lead the structure of it. So I was like, what I really want is like a catalog. So like brands could look through it, and it's like a magazine where they're like, oh, this is cool, and then there's pretty pictures, but then there's also data.
And I like that.
And it's like, oh, podcast. Here's our monthly listeners. Here's a link if you want to sample it. Here's the type of ads we've done in the past. And then on the other side, it's like, now here's what you can buy.
So is
You
it a
can
bunch
buy-
of case studies, basically?
No, it wasn't really case studies. It was like, it was really like a magazine. Like we had pictures of us doing the podcast. So we're like, we have a studio and we have all the right gear and like, here's our quality.
Okay.
So it's not really like a case study at all. It's really more something to like kind of whet their appetite, or like, if you want to buy a sponsored post, like here's our page. So like within this magazine, you could see like, here's the company's Instagram page. Here's our monthly engagement. Here's all of our metrics. It's a case study on some level, but we're not talking about what we did. We're talking about what we can do.
Okay.
And so some of it was like case study-ish. Some of the language was the same, but it's more like, here's what we can do for you. But my favorite thing about it, and this is something we worked out towards the end, was we had like a menu at the end. So we had like all this thing of like, you know, you're whetting your appetite, like, or a brand's appetite, like looking at all the stuff that's available and like, you know, how many likes or impressions a brand might get or what kind of commercial they can do. And then at the end, it's kind of like this like survey, and it's like, okay, now what do you want to order? And here's the pricing
That's
and
sick.
all
I
of that.
love
Or
that.
it's like, what do you want to order? And we'll get back to you with a quote.
Did that come from your love for cooking?
Yes.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. But no, that is cool.
Question: Were you editing this deck for each brand that you were reaching out to and pivoting it
Yes.
specifically to cater to that brand, or was this like an overall same catalog for everyone?
Yeah, because just to quickly
Yeah.
follow up on that, that's a really good point that I was going to ask, because we actually struggle with that. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
We always feel like we need to cater it specifically to the brand if like it's somebody that we really want to work with.
Yeah.
And we never know like if that's wasting our time
Yeah.
to a point, or if we should just make one big one and just literally that be the only one we send out ever.
Yeah. For really, really big things, yes, we would cater it a little bit. But really what we did was we kind of took a pause on, and this is like really digging back in the archives of my memory, but I think we took a pause on the work that we were doing. And we're like, we're just going to keep getting what's given to us if we don't stop and let everyone know what we're up to. So we just put out like this thing that was like, hey, anyone who's ever done a brand deal with Artificials before, any one of our past clients and some potential new clients, like, here's what we're up to. We're doing more traditional creative now. Here's our capabilities. If you're interested, let's set up a meeting. And then we did like a month of sales meetings where Prince and I got on calls with these brands, and we're like, here's what we're up to. And we kind of, you know, we went out to dinners, we went to New York, we went to like California, and we just met with these people and we talked with them, and we closed like a lot of it was
Wow.
actually really crazy. Like, I don't think we had any meetings, and Prince is like such a solid like sales dude. Like, I don't think we had any meetings that we didn't get work from, and if it wasn't exactly what we wanted, it was like a modified version of what we wanted. But there was no
It's
like
impressive.
I
there
was
was
like,
a
that
lot of
is-
W's for like
That's
right
very
in the
impressive.
beginning.
Yeah.
And that like time of what we did basically carried us through like the whole time there. Like all of those clients we met with, those relationships we built, like carried through. And he had a lot of like pre-existing stuff. Like he had spoke for Adorama at conferences. Like they had done like influencer deals with Sony and like all of that stuff. And so he already kind of had this like base level of like really good things. But I think really being like, here's what we're capable of. How do you want to work with us? You can pick, but like, this is our menu. Kind of like a 5-star like dining experience. It's like, this is the menu. Obviously, like they're willing to cater to you a lot. Depending on the chef, sometimes they're like, no, this is what you get. And yes, it's going to be expensive, but like we worked really hard on all this stuff, and so like kind of take it or leave it.
So, okay. So this was AOV, and you were
Yeah.
at the AOV for how many years?
For like 4 years.
4 years. Okay. And now you've transitioned
Yeah.
into building your own creative agency,
Yeah.
and which is called Monuments.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before. And I want to know specifically, before we dive fully into Monuments,
Yeah.
what were the key things that you learned from working at AOV that you were able to implement into your now current agency? What were the biggest learning lessons that helped you to become a successful now
Yeah.
creative agency owner? And then also, what were some of the setbacks or things that you maybe could have done better at
Yeah.
AOV that also were great learning lessons for Monuments?
Yeah. Like the role of creative director, it's easy when it's your company and just you. And like it's very easy to just be like, I'm a creative director. But like and I attribute Prince for a lot of this, but he was like, yo, you're gonna be the creative director and like you're gonna own that role. But that also includes, and he expected a lot, which I really appreciate, but that includes managing people. That includes overseeing every single thing that comes out of our agency. That includes being like kind of like the last line of like creative. So like any piece of content, any photo that went out, I was the last line of defense against like errors, like Vieira and like some of our team there, like for typos and all that, because I'm like horrible with that. Definitely more like on the creative and like how it looks kind of side. Like, but that was like on my shoulder. So if something got fucked up, like that was me. And these were like big projects. So like I lost a lot of sleep in the beginning trying to figure that out, because before then I'm like third, fourth, fifth down the line of something. So if something goes wrong, yes, there were big, you know, like $1 million campaigns, but I'm just the
It's
one
not your
editing.
name.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
the one
On the
editing
line.
the video, and it's
Yeah.
like really not that big of a deal. With this stuff, it's like I'm the one. I'm responsible for it.
Right.
So with that role comes a lot of responsibility, but managing people was, I would say, the like learning how to manage people well and how to like treat people right and like create a value exchange that makes sense for both people, where you walk away from a project and you feel like happy. Or my absolute favorite thing with Art Visuals specifically was like creators that we would work with would tell me like, this was the coolest thing that I ever shot, or this was like the most fun project that I ever worked on, or
Wow.
like that to
That's
me.
amazing.
Yeah.
It
That's a
is.
huge
I was-
success for having
Yeah.
a creator walk away feeling
For
that
sure.
way.
And like my thing with that is like before I was like an athlete, like I was the one on the field doing the thing, and then like when I started working there, I moved to more of like a coach, where like I'm setting everything up for everyone to succeed, or even like a party host. It's like you're setting everything up for everyone to have a good time and to like interact with each other. Like you're ultimately responsible for like what happens, but like with the coach analogy, it's like I'm the one coming up with the plays and the plans and all of this stuff, but like you guys go out and everyone have fun, but also like we want to win.
Yeah.
And so like that to me,
Great.
I love that. I was
analogy.
just saying, I didn't want to like cut
Yeah.
you off, but I
Phenomenal.
love that.
yeah, so that was like this transition that I had personally of like learning to manage people, learning to carry the weight of like a lot of responsibility. And I think, yeah, I attribute Prince and like that whole like the like NV and like that whole team for like being gracious with me through that transition. Because
No, but you were, I mean, I only worked on 2 projects with AOV and
Yeah.
you, but you were a fantastic boss.
Yeah,
Like,
thank you.
You were so easy to work with, but also you had the perfect amount of like creative control in the sense that I knew what you wanted and that I was going to create your vision, but you gave me the
Freedom.
space to do what I do
Yeah.
best and to create in the moment. And yeah, it was a very like good balance of I knew exactly what you wanted so I could create something beautiful for you, but also not feeling like restricted to
Yeah.
only shooting something a specific way. And you were doing that with everyone because you were managing the creatives, you were managing the talent, you were managing like the production, like you were, I mean, the Sony shoots were insane. You were managing
was wild.
so many people and yet taking the
Yeah.
time to like go talk to everyone, make sure everyone was feeling good. Like it was, yeah.
Well,
I
did you
applaud
ever did you ever have any issues like translating those, I guess, creative concepts to the team, to the clients? Like, did you ever struggle with that?
Yeah, but I think that's just part of it. It's like this communication thing of like the way that you talk to a brand is different than the way that you talk to a creative director or a marketing director, whoever, is different than the way that you talk to a creative who's working for you, even like down to like the lighting guys. Like you have a different like language, and that's where I really appreciate like all these weird different roles that I had leading up until that point, because like working in coffee, like you learn customer service and how to like, you know, interact with people. And then working in an agency, like I learned what it feels like being the guy who's editing the video, having 10 people barking orders at you. And then being a shooter, I was like, okay, like I kind of know enough about cameras to get by, or I can be like, hey, bump the ISO, or, you know, change this or whatever. So when I'm giving direction, the person doesn't feel like I'm somebody who has never been in their shoes before, or I'm just like
Huge.
completely oblivious, you know? So I'm like, I can tell someone like, oh, let's switch to a 35, or let's do this, or let's do that. And I know what the language is for their specific thing, even with photography, like with editing. Like I was giving you editing notes, and I'm like, I've used Lightroom before, so I kind of know like, okay, you know, we need to adjust this or whatever. So
I think that's a superpower in itself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's why that's always what I wanted to do. And I had a really good creative director at that first agency that I worked at who kind of modeled what it meant to be, because she was so talented at what she did that like I felt like I had to get to her level of expectation, and she had no problem being like, nope, take it back and like rework it. Like one of her favorite sayings is like, she's like a punk rock. I think it's like kill the warm puppies. Like your first, and like it was really dramatic, but you're like your first idea or your first like crack at something in advertising is usually like the really low hanging fruit. And so we'd like work all week on something, bring it to her, and she'd be like, nope, let's take it back and keep workshopping it. Let's keep pushing it. And you like fall in love with these ideas. And then she's like, nope, throw it away. Like it's not good enough. And I was just like, okay. And after a few times of that, I'm like, okay, so now I need to like level up. And then now sometimes those first ideas are getting picked, but then also you're learning how to push it. And this is a thing I see with like influencers of like their first idea is their baby. And before they're ever presenting or pitching any idea, they're falling in love with this baby. And they're like, oh, this is my beautiful idea. I love this idea. And they're like putting it on the shelf. And they sit with it for so long before they ever get it in front of anybody. And like that's something that I feel like they could be better at, is like knowing that like your first thing is just like a rough sketch, and you might completely change it, you might refine it, you might end up somewhere totally different from where you started. But it's okay to throw out those other ideas, because if you're really creative, you can just keep coming up with them, and people who aren't creative can't. And that's where it's like they fall so in love with that first thing that they come up with. And so it's a good practice to be like, okay, this was a great idea, but we're just going to throw it in the trash can and we're going to make 10 more. So I think getting good at that process of not being so in love with your ideas, it really helps you distill. And that's where an agency is really beautiful, in the sense of like they take hundreds and hundreds of ideas and they distill them down to the best one, and then they execute that one idea. And that's where you see like the level of quality difference between like a straight up influencer and then an agencies, because all of that budget, the reason that they're more expensive is because they're doing this process of there's all these people collaborating, putting their heads together to make ideas better consistently.
That is phenomenal,
Honestly, that is
phenomenal
amazing.
advice to not only raise the standards, but to question all of your ideas continuously and see like where you can keep innovating, where you can keep pushing, because it's so true. Like so many times we come up with an idea and we're like, that's it. That's the concept. When it's like, okay, that's a good concept,
That's
but if
a
you
concept.
workshopped that
Yeah.
for another
Push
2
yourself
days,
further than
Yeah.
that.
you could get so much further than that, but we don't even like consider that so many
Yeah.
times because we fall in
Yeah.
love with the initial concept. So that's phenomenal.
So to that point about like throwing away ideas and stuff, I feel like this is something that I've experienced with a lot of like young creatives, is they'll submit something, and I was this way too. They'll submit something and they'll be like, this thing is great and here's why it's great, and it's great, and there's no notes, like nothing's going to change on it. And then the people on the side who have like all of these other people to answer, the client, you know, the client's marketing director, whatever, they know the brand really, really well. And they're like, well, there's a lot of things that need to change here. This is like so far off the mark or whatever. But like being really good at taking that feedback, you can tell people who have worked with a really good creative director or at an agency, like it's a telltale sign of how they take feedback. Because a good creative will show you something and be like, I just want to get a temperature check on this. I just want to run this by you. This is rough. Like, let's work through it. A inexperienced creative will put all the bells and whistles on the thing, finish it, maybe like bake in the color if it was like a video. They'll do all the things, and then they're like, okay, here's my finished product. And it's really hard to go back and be like, well, we have a lot of adjustments to your finished product because I know the brand, I know their strategy. I have read their 300-page brand book. I know what they want, and this is not what they want. So I think learning how to be okay, to be comfortable sharing work that's not fully baked. Now, for a small business, that's not going to make a lot of sense because if they see something that's not fully baked, they're going to be like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is trash. The color's off. This is off. But somebody who knows is going to be like, okay, well, I understand. We're doing color later. We're doing graphics later. I don't need a finished product, but I do need to make sure that this is in line with our strategy. And that's where I think companies are willing to pay agencies more because they have this process baked into what they do so they can see it before it's done. And so I just wanted to say that.
No, that is a phenomenal point.
That's
You
great.
can make more money if you're like, here's a rough idea, how let's refine it together. And it's really collaboration at like a very high level in the sense of like, I'm a creative director and I'm working with another brand's creative director and we're like riffing on this really rough idea and how we make it work for their brand. And that's where like for an influencer campaign, you're not going to have that level of back and forth, but for an agency or if you're working for an agency, you're definitely going to have that level of back and forth. You might have 15, 20, 30 revisions, but it's going to be exactly what they need. And the reason that's so important, where we were talking about awareness and engagement, is that they might be using this for ads for the next like 6 months. And it's not so much important if it works on Instagram. They don't give a shit about any of that. They care that 100,000 people are going to see this, 500 times. And there can't be any errors. There can't be any mistakes. And it's a reflection of their brand. And so they're
Well, it's creating the branding, right?
Exactly.
Then that
It's
person
visual
views
branding.
that brand
Exactly.
as that video that they saw, which, that makes total sense. Because then
Yeah.
I'm not even buying the product. It's just about, like, knowing the brand.
It's just
and what
about
the brand
knowing
is.
the brand, experiencing
Yeah.
the brand, and what their feeling is towards that.
Yeah.
So like you might, it's
That makes so much
There's a
sense.
lot to dive into there specifically, but
Yeah.
we can move on from that. But I just wanted to say that because you can always tell, right? I can tell if a person has worked in an agency or the level of work that they've done by how they handle feedback.
Okay, creatives, keep that in mind. This is such valuable
This
information.
is a really good point, guys.
Be open to feedback, accept the feedback, work with the feedback. Don't be surprised that there's feedback. Like,
Yeah.
what your vision is isn't necessarily exactly what the brand's vision is. And at the end of the day, if you want to further your career, you have to be very malleable and be able to change and work in collaboration with your creative director, with your editor, with your brand, etc.
And yeah, there's two kind of thoughts there of like, one is like, if you're going to be an artist where like you're known for your style and your thing, like that's fine, but like you need to you can't just be a carbon copy of someone else. You can't just copy someone's colors or use their presets. Like you need to be an artist where you define your own stuff. You have a point of view. Like you're like, here's why I like moody colors, not just because like, oh, they look really cool and I love them. Like that. That's like
DJ hates
it's like,
that.
Yeah, it's like no, it's just like have a point of view, have a reason, be an artist. If
yeah.
you're gonna be an artist, be about it. Like talk like an artist, be able to explain your work. Like I chose this type of lighting because I want to portray this type of mood and blah blah blah. But if you're gonna be like a working creative on the other side, you kind of do have to be a chameleon, because if you're going to work for Nike, you have to fall into Nike's brand guide and you have to portray Nike's message. If they hire you because they like what you do and they want you to do what you do for them, that's a different story. But if you're just like, I just want to work for Nike and I just want to shoot for them, then you do have to be a chameleon and you kind of have to blend in and you fall in line with their brand. And I think that's kind of more where I line up with what I'm doing now. It's not necessarily my style, but I'm being a very strategic chameleon for this brand, because they have a strategy, they have a goal that they're trying to accomplish. And I can't say like what the brand is or anything, but basically they're trying to build awareness for something that's like completely new. This one's in Idaho. It's completely new in Idaho. And they're basically trying to be like, we need people in this age range to, at a very baseline, like know who we are and what we do, and whether or not they buy our product or get involved on whatever level, they just need to know about it right now. Phase 2 is like, now they're becoming a part of what we're doing, but phase 1, and it's a very valuable initiative for them, I'll say, to get people to know who they are. And so that's what I've been doing, like pretty much nonstop since I left AOV is helping build awareness for this brand. But it's like I'm not posting about it. It has nothing to do with my Instagram or anything like that. But on the flip side, it's also the most money I've ever made. So it's like this thing of like I'm adding value and the metrics are like proving themselves over and over again. We're performing at like 75% above what like they expected. And they're like, we really couldn't work with anyone else locally because you understand our brand so well. I had one of the people that we work with, because we're highlighting like these specific like niches in this overarching thing. I'm being really vague. I know.
I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. It's funny.
but
really, I don't
explain
know.
it like this.
But basically, like he was like, you understand this thing better than people who work here, like, and that to me was like such a like I was like, okay, cool. All the research I'm doing, all of these things like feel really good because I know what they're doing so well that I can like make decisions really fast when I'm on set shooting for them, or I can, when I'm writing copy, I can be like, here's what we need to talk about. And if it doesn't make sense, like I already know that. So we're not doing all this extra back and forth. So there's a ton of value there.
Okay, so we talked about how learning to delegate and build a team at AOV was really, really important for
Yeah.
now moving into Monuments.
Yeah.
What's something that you could have done better at AOV that you've now applied to Monuments?
Yeah. I mean, better. I feel like at AOV, we were working at such a high level that like, and we had a really great team. I think better might not be the word, but I think a big part of what I understood is the value of having a really kick-ass team and like good people around. And this is something that I do now for all the sets that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I was working with this executive producer. She's helping me like crew up a shoot. And she was like, hey, what do you think about this person? What do you think about this person? Whatever. And I was like, before you ask me, is this somebody that you like outside of work would go out and have a beer with? And even down from like the grip and electric guys all the way up the team to the PAs to everybody. And I'm like, let that be kind of your benchmark, because like the vibe on set is more important to me than like their skill level. Now for a DP, that's not the case. Like I would pick someone who's kind of an asshole, and I have worked with people that are assholes, but they're really, really good DPs. And I'm like, we'll manage that. But mostly I just want everyone to be having a really good time and be having fun. And because you make really good creative work when you feel like like that feeling that you were talking about of like feeling free to create and do your thing and knowing you have some autonomy, like that creates space for people to do their best work.
I could not agree more with that.
Yeah.
That is like huge. Like when you feel like you can be vulnerable and you feel like you can let any idea out there and not be told like you're wrong, it creates that environment that you're saying where like we can mess up and it's okay, but we're not going to mess up because we feel like we're safe here.
Yeah. Or if you do mess up, it's like there's grace for some of that. And a lot of things can be fixed after the fact. Like we're not out here curing cancer. Like it's not, like so high stakes that it's worth sacrificing your mental health to be on set. And I feel like a lot of the projects that I was working on, like that I've worked on out here, like in LA, the stakes feel really, really high. And I think to be able to ease that and to just get more creative, but to do that, you really have to know, like to be confident, or to like, let's say you're climbing without a rope, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you fall, like
game over. Are
Yeah.
there any challenges that you face in translating concepts to clients? And if so, like how do you navigate a differing view on a concept or a strategy, especially creatively? Because a lot of times on the brand side, yes, they have a brand vision, but they might not fully understand the creative, what it takes to implement all the vision. You know what I
Can
mean?
you give me a more specific example of what you're asking?
Like whenever you're pitching a specific concept, you're directing an ad for a client and they don't understand or see the vision, but like this is what's going to make the most sense.
We kind of talked about this earlier whenever I said how do you translate the creative concepts. So I guess are you just
I'm
asking
asking
for a more
like
specific
how
one?
you navigate that with the client when
If
they
they're-
don't see eye to eye.
If you don't see eye to eye with them, at the end of the day, well, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, like they're the client, so like advertising specifically is like a services based business. I take like a very southern approach to this in the sense of like it's like please and thank you. In the sense of like if you're gonna pay me money, like I'm gonna do whatever you're asking. But if I hate what you're asking me to do, then it's gonna be more expensive. And like I just
No.
and I will say exactly what I said right there. I'll say that to a client and I'll be like, I don't necessarily agree with this. Like here's a strategy that I think makes sense where it's easy to win clients over or pivot on strategy is knowing their brand inside and out and also being insightful, being like, well, it looks like you guys are trying to do this. Like, I don't know if you've thought about this option, but like when I go into a meeting with a brand, like I know them really well and I know a lot about them. And there's been a lot of times where they're like, wow, we came in here wanting something completely different, but now we want what you said because that sounds better. But if they disagree, that's totally fine. Like I'll do whatever for $20. No, I'm just kidding. No, like, but it's like a thing of like, if I don't like what I'm doing, I'll do it, but it is going to be a lot more expensive. And, but I would rather not even go that whole route because the brand's going to overpay for it. They're not going to necessarily be happy. And if they already know what they want in their mind and they're not like willing to collaborate at all, they're probably not someone I want as a long-term partner anyways. And so it's kind of like a lose-lose in the sense of like, yes, you might be getting paid a lot, but it feels very transactional. And I don't like that. I'm like all about having a relationship with your brands because that it's long term, number one. So you're thinking like for life. That's why my company is called Monuments, is because like I'm building something substantial with my clients. So I'm like taking them to this place where it's like a milestone in the road of like, okay, you were doing things one way or like here. And then when it came time to like level up your business, you hired me. We did all this stuff and maybe you got an exit that changed your life. Or like maybe you built this thing that you've been wanting to do forever. Or maybe it's like just a video telling people who you are and like about your business. And these are all things that I've done, but it's something that's substantial. That's like a fork in the road for who you are or what your business does. Yeah.
What
a
are your
long answer.
goals?
No, that's really good.
What are your goals with Monuments?
Yeah. I think for me, that's a good question. Well, I had a revenue goal for this year and I hit that and I feel
Yay.
really good about that. And
Yeah, what was the goal?
I don't want to say specifically, but
You're like swim, not sink.
I know.
yeah, it was to stay afloat. It was
that's
basically like 5x what I made working as an employee.
That's a really good goal.
Yeah. So
George.
yeah.
Well, no, I'm like that's
Yeah,
that's great.
for sure. So I was kind of like, if this is gonna be sustainable, like this was just like a test for myself. It's like, will I put in the work without a boss? It's like climbing up a hill. It's like I knew that it would be this thing of like I'm climbing a mountain, and like not every day is gonna be easy, and there's gonna be a lot of challenges and all that stuff. But I'm like, if I can make it to this base camp, then I know that I can be successful going forward. And like that happened. And so I'm like, okay, cool. We made it here and now I can breathe. Cause I've literally been like head down, just like grinding every single day and like working with my team. And I'm like so appreciative for Tess specifically. If you're listening, I love you, Tess. But she has helped me so much. She worked at AOV too, but she helps me like organize shoots and like thoughts and ideas. And we'll just meet. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can unload like logistical things to her. And she can help kind of organize them and like put them into place. So we were
Elena.
yeah.
Oh, perfect.
We were friends before and we had this role like opening up at Art of Visuals where we needed like an air traffic controller essentially. And I was like, I know the perfect person, like just the way that her brain works. I'm like, she needs to be the one doing this. But your question was
What are your goals?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, this is great. Like, do you have any specific goals you want to hit in the next year?
Yeah.
What's your vision? Specific type of client you want to work
Okay,
with? Like
perfect.
the direction of where you want your agency to go in?
Yes, I have a very specific, and I'm kind of refining it right now, a very specific type of client. It's like a small to medium-sized business who is on the verge of whether they're like bringing a product to market, working for an exit, meaning like to sell their company, or expanding what they do. So maybe they like have had one product for a long time and now they're going to do 10 products. there are some benchmarks to that of they kind of have to have a proven track record of being a successful business. Like I'm not so much interested in working with a startup, but I'm more interested in working with somebody who like kind of knows what they're up to, understands the business and their market a little bit, and wants to expand. Because I think those, for me, when I get in a room with people like that, who also people who are extremely passionate about what they do, I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't really give a shit about their photos. I want to work with people who care. That can be harder because people who care are way more particular with what they want. But when it's right, it's like rocket fuel. When you're passionate about what you do and the other person's passionate about what you do and you both care about the same thing, it's like you get together and it's like, like you can feel it after meetings and all that stuff. I want to have that. I want to also expand. I'm in Idaho right now, but like my goal for by like Q1 of next year is to be working in some other markets. And I'll talk more about that on the next podcast. But yeah, I think expanding. And then I think really, I have some merch stuff that I want to do. So some stuff that's for, like, it's kind of like for my clients in the sense of like, it's things that are a little reminder of those monuments that they're building. Because a lot of times, like you guys probably know this as like a business owner, there's a lot of victories that go really uncelebrated.
Yeah.
And I had a moment in the past where I did something like really huge that was monumental for my own creative journey, where I hit a goal that I had set like when I was a little kid to be like, I did this thing, and like no one was celebrating, no one was cheering, it was just me. And I'm at the finish line of this like creative marathon that I just ran, and I'm like, oh man, but there's like no one around because it was just like, okay, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And I was like, I need to stop for a second and celebrate what I just did. And so I like bought myself a reminder, and it was like a very expensive reminder of like that thing. But it's something that I have with me every single day. And I'm like, this is a reminder of this thing that I achieved. So I want to make some merch and like some products for my clients that are those things that are like a reminder of, and I have some stuff it's not like in the works. It's like just rough ideas started, but I have some stuff that is that, and not just for my clients, but for like other creators and just other people that they can wear and like put on as a reminder of the things that they're accomplishing.
I
What
love
a
that.
phenomenal like client experience. Like
Yeah.
I want to be one of DJ's clients
know.
to receive this,
But
this
I
like
love
care and
it.
attention.
I know, but I love that you said that to go back about the celebrating your wins, because
Yeah.
like you said, it's hard because you get a win and then it's like literally head down onto the next thing.
Yeah.
That's also a goal that we have this year.
Yeah.
Like even like Friendsgiving
Yeah.
literally was yesterday.
Yeah.
And we're here now, and like I haven't even had time to like process it, and I want to make sure I can before going to the next thing, because
Yeah.
like it's hard.
Yeah.
I just think that's a whole other conversation that we can also talk on the next podcast. But
Well,
it's
that's
really
another.
important.
Speaking of goals, that's another goal. Like to your point, Georgia, for me is to move a little bit slower, because agency life moves so fast.
So fast.
It's hard to prioritize your own mental health, to
Yeah.
prioritize growing the right way. Sometimes growing too fast is a bad thing.
That's
and
literally what we've just been experiencing the past year.
Yeah,
we're
because
going too fast,
yeah.
where it's like
you grow all crooked, or like it's
you
like
lose sight of like the
Exactly.
goal. You're like here's the goal, and you go like left and then
Yeah.
right, and then you turn, and then this and this and
Exactly.
this. When if you go slower, that patience will
you
take
can be
you
more
there.
strategic. Yeah, and that's where that's another goal of mine is to grow consistently, but to grow slow in the sense of like anyone who works for me, like their mental health and like their well-being is like at the top of the priority list, and not so much the work. And anyone who works for me now will know that that's a top priority. I think my own mental, physical health and well-being, like that's a top priority. I'm working on I just want to grow the right way, and I want to be thinking like long term.
Yeah.
This has all been such phenomenal advice. I know so many people are going to get so much out of this. But
Good.
last question I want to ask you
Yeah.
before we close out is, what advice would you give to someone aspiring to become a creative director in the creative industry, really in any niche? But
Yeah.
what's give us 2 concrete tips that really helped you that could help someone else?
I think please and thank you. I think, which that just means having manners.
Basic, but it's true.
Yeah,
It is.
it's like, especially out here, I feel like it's such like a dog eat dog kind of world where people will like step on you to get ahead. And number one, I just think that's bad karma. But I also think it doesn't feel good when you win because you cheated. And like at the end of the day, like I've experienced like some of that, like not like in jobs or anything, but just like with people, you know, people being like cutthroat or like stealing jobs or whatever. And I'm just like, that doesn't feel good. They have to live with themselves at the end of the day. So like not getting upset about that, but I just always like, I have manners and I have respect for the people that I work with. And I think keeping that top of mind as you're working, I know it's hard. I know there's moments where like you want to give up or like whatever, or like you're competing, not fighting, but you're competing for projects with other people. But it's not like I win, you lose. It's like there's always a solution where everybody can win. So it's like, how do you get to those solutions? I think with mutual respect and please and thank you. Second thing would be to know your shit. Like if you're gonna, like I was saying before, like if you're gonna be an artist, be an artist. Like be about it. Know how to talk about your work in a way that like communicates, you know, what the fuck is up. Like if that's who you're gonna be, and that's the thing that like frustrates me so much is like, okay, well you're saying you're an artist, but you're not talking like an artist, and you don't respect your art enough to do all the research. It's like you just kind of figured out you're kind of good with the camera, but like you're really not an artist. You have no point of view. It's like I talked to this, I'll be super quick with this, but I talked to this lady who's a curator for the Met. And she was saying, we were like at a photography event, and I asked her like what was the biggest like kind of takeaway, because she was critiquing people's portfolios, really, really good people's portfolios, people that everyone on this podcast would know. She said people are so focused on how they're saying what they're saying that they're not paying attention to what they're saying. So they have no point of view in their work. They are beautiful images, absolutely beautiful, but there's no point of view. And so at the end of the day, they're just copies of each other and they have nothing to say. And I think that you should have something to say. If you're going to be making something, you need a point of view, and you need to be able to talk about it. That's it.
Mic drop.
I know.
Mic
that
drop. That is
perfect.
so
I love
good.
that.
And so many people are going to be so inspired by this.
Sweet.
Thank you so much for coming on, DJ.
Yeah,
Obviously,
thank
we're going to have to
you.
do round 2, round 3, round 4. I feel
Let's
like there's
do it.
so many directions we can go in here. But where can people find you? Where can they support your
Yes.
work? And how
Yes.
can they hire you if they have a brand and they want Monuments to be their team?
Yeah. You can find me at DJ the CD, and I'm in the process of building my website and social stuff out, but my email is monuments.cc@gmail.com. So email me.
Sick.
Yeah.
Hey, well,
Amazing.
thank you. You are so inspiring,
Yeah,
DJ.
thank
Like,
you.
We're very lucky to have you
Yeah.
on the pod and also as a friend.
Yeah.
And thank you for hosting that Friendsgiving. That was a
oh,
Incredible.
yeah, I know.
So much fun.
Was
We
it
need
too?
to like have an episode just to deep dive into Friendsgiving.
Oh my god.
yeah.
It would
the
actually.
Friendsgiving recap episode, like a reality TV show.
Oh
We
my
should do-
god.
we
We
should-
should get like a main like somebody from. Go ahead. What?
We should call everyone who was at Friendsgiving and be like, okay, give us like
Oh.
a 30-second recap.
That's a good
Everyone.
idea.
That's a great idea.
I'm so down for that.
Just like more work.
I know.
Anyways,
No, but
Thank you guys.
I know I'm personally even feeling inspired. Just like even like I said, we have an agency, and like I feel like I just learned so much just from hearing the way that you talk about things. So thank you,
Yeah.
DJ. You are
Yeah.
amazing.
And I love the podcast, by the way.
Thanks.
Taking minutes to say,
Aw.
yeah, I love what
Glad
you
you
guys are
like it.
doing. Yeah, and I
Thanks.
think number one, it's just like catching up with you guys, too. But
That's what I mean. I feel like
Yeah.
I've been wanting to sit down with you to actually know more about you.
It's so funny because we like have known each other for a long time, but I feel like we don't.
all right. On that note, thank you guys so much for coming to another
Thank you,
episode of Shoot Your
guys.
Shot. You can find us on Instagram at Shoot Your Shot Podcast _. Give us a like, subscribe on YouTube, leave us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, ooh, Danny.
So close.
Ding, ding.
We were so close. It's okay. Leave us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and generally do all the things you would do to support a podcast that you enjoy. And
Yes.
we will see you at the next episode.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Shoot your shot. Shoot your shot.